What's up? What the hell am I doing here?
First of all, why are you covered in sweat?
It's 90 degrees in Brooklyn. Why are you in a vest? It's fucking 90 degrees outside.
Yeah, look and feel good, that's why. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the pilot of The Steam Zone, the show where we cover the stories powering America's industrial renaissance. I'm Noah Sheinbaum.
I'm Ben Jacobson.
We're learning our cadence here. We're excited to be with you today. We're going to talk about some of the stories that are powering this industrial movement in this country, both on the manufacturing side, on the defense side. We've got a lineup of some guests. We're going to have a little fun. We don't know what the fuck we're doing. The goal here is to inform, educate, and entertain.
And have some fun too.
Have a little bit of fun. So we need you
sweat.
And apparently sweat. It's the steam room. Ben's coming from the sauna. So with that, let's go ahead and close some tabs. Talk about some of the topics that have been on our minds this week. We've been searching the internet. We've been listening to some podcasts. We've been spending a little too much time on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter.
Too much time.
So Ben, kick us off. What was driving the internet this week?
I think everybody on X this week was obsessed with Soham.
Oh my God.
But I was thinking a lot about this in the lens of defense tech. So what is the Soham for defense tech was top of mind for me.
So first off, let's give the people a little bit of context. Soham Perak, yesterday, Sohail tweets out in the middle of the night, about 2 a.m. on July 2nd. He says, PSA, there's a guy named Soham Perak in India who works at 3 to 4 startups at the same time. He's been preying on YC companies and more. Beware. What happened next was over the next couple of hours, it seemed like every startup in Silicon Valley has hired this guy, Soham Perak.
Yeah. Well, I hope he's not working at any defense techs, but when, I love thinking about can't just be this guy, right? There has to be so many of them.
It's gotta be. This is the remote work phenomenon. What do you think? What is Soham Perak at defense? Is that like the person who has one security clearance and then uses it to get TSSCI access?
It could be that. I think maybe the other thing is it's not actually a person, but it's every defense tech company winning a bunch of SBIR awards and thinking they've hit the holy grail, right? Instead of your founding engineer, it's your founding government contract, and you all think these SBIRs are going to transition into billion-dollar Palantir-like programs, and of course, it's not.
Yeah, so it's like you get your SBIR. This is your seed, right? So Soham's kind of a seed round hire.
Yeah, exactly.
So your SIBR is your seed round
we made
contract.
it. We got it. Soham's going to power us. SIBR's going to power us through.
And you fall off a fucking cliff.
And then you realize everyone has a Soham. Everyone has a SIBR.
There's a lot of people who don't yet know they have Soham on their roster.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
And certainly the VCs are all funding Soham, and they're funding SIBRs, too.
Well, God bless. If Soham, if you're out there and you're looking for a new role in defense tech, we may know a guy. First off, tab closed. I think that's enough for today.
Oh, that's what tab closed means.
Tab closed. We're out of here. We're going to rip through these things. So the second, there's an article in the Dispatch from the former National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster. Trump ends the folly of de-escalation. For too long, American presidents let Iran believe it could act with impunity. This is a little bit of a little hot take. I don't know if this is quite a neocon take. I'm not really sure. But HR's argument here is basically that for the last series of administrations, Biden, Trump 1, Obama, really all the way back to W. Bush, there's been this kind of sense that, we talk about constraining Iran's ability to maneuver in the Middle East, but that maybe it's been more talk than bite. There hasn't really been kind of enforcement of that. So this is in the wake of the Operation Midnight Lion, Midnight Thunder, Midnight something.
It always has a cool name.
They were really cool. It was a really cool. The B-2s flew from the middle of the United States over Tehran and bombed some nuclear facilities.
I think you could do, there's the flip coin of escalate or de-escalate, but then there's the other way, which is how do you de-escalate? Did you de-escalate in the right ways, or did you escalate in the right ways? So often it's not just the binary of escalate or de-escalate, but it's the pathways within that. And I'm sure there are good ways to escalate and bad ways, and there are good ways to de-escalate and bad ways to de-escalate. And so maybe the conversation is more nuanced than just this kind of false binary.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly there were a lot of folks very concerned as it looked like the U.S. was going to strike Iran that, hey, look, Donald Trump is meant to be the anti-war president. Why are we getting engaged in the Middle East yet again. There is opportunity cost to moving carrier strike groups from the Pacific to the Middle East. These things do matter. At the end of the day, it seems like, at least for this chapter, it was extremely restrained. It was a one strike, and now we seem to be talking about peace. We'll see. It's too early to tell. But this idea of de-escalation versus sometimes you actually need to take kind of a sizable swing to kneecap an adversary. It's certainly a take.
Yeah, it feels like football also, right? Everyone says like prevent defense. Yeah. You often see it just as horrible, right? And the offense just keeps scoring. So is de-escalation the prevent defense of international affairs?
Sometimes a good defense is the best offense or something like that. Yeah. The best offense is a good defense. I don't really know. We're going to close this one out.
Time will tell us.
Time will tell us. Thank you, General McMaster. Okay. Third on kind of topics that I thought were pretty interesting this week, we had Jordan Schneider, the host of the China Talk podcast, featured a guest essay from Afra over in China, which this is, folks may or may not be familiar with this abundance movement that's taking place.
Yeah, I'm abundance pilled.
So. He's an abundance guy. I'm not going to talk about my politics. This is no politics here. However, abundance, Ezra Klein, this idea that actually maybe the Democrats, rather than thinking of a kind of a scarcity mindset and it's about dividing a pie, maybe it should be about growing the pie. It's talking about, hey, deregulation and more stuff, more construction, more transportation, more food, more energy.
And it's a focus on outcomes instead of process, right? So it's not about how do we actually get the thing we want, not worrying about whether we're doing it in a certain way that matches a certain set of preferences, but just worrying about did we get what we wanted or not?
Super interesting. I think what was most interesting about this piece was that it was comparative reading of abundance between Chinese readers and American readers. And there were a couple of themes that came up here. So I'll kick us off, and I'd love to hear kind of what you thought, Ben. The first was, one of the titles was The Poverty of American Imagination. And it tells a story of some Americans, American congressmen who go to Japan, they see the Shinkansen, the bullet train, and they're just like, wow, this could exist. Like, how cool is Japan? How forward-thinking is Japan? And the question is well, where did we fall off? We didn't have to live. We didn't have to have Amtrak be more broken down than functional. So that poverty of imagination of what we could live like, to me, that really hit home.
Yeah, and you feel it, in everything we do. It's like, why can't we have nice things? Sometimes, and we're doing a lot of great things, but I think it's how do we get better instead of worrying about how comparing ourselves to other. Let's focus on America, but there clearly is a gap of what we could do versus what we're doing now.
There was one other one I wanted to bring up because I think it's very relevant, especially for folks watching this show who might be spending a little bit of time on Twitter, or excuse me, X.
Yeah, we can't screw that every time.
X, LinkedIn, whatever social media you happen to be consuming today. Both sides thought that the other side spent too much time doom scrolling on each other's social media feeds. So Americans who are watching Chinese feeds be like, oh my God, they got all this stuff, or look how crazy their things, or look how scary they are. And the Chinese who are doom scrolling the American feeds having that same experience. And so this is, people talk a lot about the difference between governments and people. This is one where some of the people were saying, man, we're not actually...
So maybe the answer is we all just delete all X off our phone and we'll have abundant time to do actually other things.
For abundant times, give yourself an abundance of free time.
Yeah, remove all social media.
Stop scrolling on social media. What do you think? Are we closed on this one?
Yeah, we closed it.
Tab closed. All right, that brings us to topic number 3. Everybody's favorite internet supervillain, Chamath Palihapitiya. I think I got that right. That was pretty good. I'm going to give myself credit for that. I'll take a thank you. Perfect. So Chamath is back on the timeline this week. Some of the news, folks, coming out of tech world was that Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, back with a vengeance, making $100 million a year offers to leading AI researchers. And this is to form Meta's new superintelligence team. Chamath has a take, surprise, surprise, which is basically that humans are all highly predictable creatures. No amount of mission and vision will supersede the ability to build generational wealth for oneself and one's family when given the chance. What do you think, Mr. Jacobson?
Yeah, I think this is he is such a myopic thinker and probably can only think about the world that he's lived in. Not everyone, after they make hundreds of millions of dollars, which supposedly he made while working at Meta or Facebook, would then decide to scam people out of money in SPACs. I don't think that was the only option he had. He probably could have still lived a comfortable life doing something with more mission or vision. And we see that in the world, right? There are a lot of people that have devoted their time, money, and resources after hitting it big to doing important things. So, I think he sees the path he was on and thinks it's the only path, but that can't be true.
This is one of the most obviously false and stupid takes that I think we're going to see today. By virtue of the fact that we are standing here, we know many people who have made the decision to work in less economically viable industries or less economically profitable industries, even things like manufacturing, defense, which don't have huge payoffs. Everybody is not optimizing for their own earnings right out of the gate. We'll talk about some of the folks who make the decision to, Ben, you, out of Horace Mann, if you're not familiar with Horace Mann, let me tell you, this is the elite of the elite New York preparatory schools, private school, where Ben went to high school. And you did what when you graduated?
Well, went to college, but then decided to join the Marine Corps. And I certainly, wasn't optimizing for, in some ways I wanted to do some really cool stuff, which I got to do some cool stuff, but, a lot of paperwork too, which will be a theme in the DoD. But I don't think 18-year-olds, I don't think 22-year-olds even college are all optimizing for cash flow. Then you wouldn't have people joining the military. And we need great people joining the military.
This is a good example of telling on yourself. It means that maybe the swilling of champagne and wine and sitting there in your $1 million Armani suits is perhaps not delivering the value and the fulfillment in life that you were hoping. So thank you, Chamath, for your brilliance as always. I did think Mr. Aaron Slatov had a pretty good retort, which was, hello, just wanted to say that turning down 9 figures is easy if you're not weak. Mission is more important. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Amen. Aaron, thank you for your service.
And how many studies have been done showing where income and happiness kind of taper off at a certain income level? I just don't think Chamath is right in the data or in the take.
Let's go ahead and close out that tab. Thank you very much. All right, so now on to a little bit of a different topic here. We had a passing last week, which was covered, I thought, very, very well in Arena Magazine by the magazine's founder, Maxwell Meyer. Fred Smith, the founder of Federal Express.
And a Marine.
And a fellow business school graduate.
Yeah.
That's false. As a fellow business school graduate, we learned a thing or two about Mr. Smith. First of all, his life, I think, fascinating. This is somebody who graduates from Yale University in 1966 and immediately joins the Marines, serves in Vietnam.
Chamath would think he would never join the Marines.
That's correct. Right? Chamath would basically say this man did not exist. After writing, mind you, his famous thesis, which laid out the case for FedEx, which was basically the idea of using planes to deliver packages and do it within kind of 12 hours and overnight. Now, the story that Fred Smith, that was taught to me about Fred Smith, actually has nothing to do with any of this. Did you hear the story about Fred in Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a story that would happen to a Marine.
Would you like to share?
I think, and you'll correct me where I'm wrong, but he took the last money he had in his company, about to go broke, and like any entrepreneur founder said, how do I maximize the last money I have, and put it on black or red, right? And played some poker, or what game did he play?
Yeah, so we're mixing metaphors here. He did not play roulette. He played
poker.
Blackjack.
Okay, blackjack. Okay, 21.
So, again, as I remember the story, this was, FedEx, while now a wild success, was not always a success. In the early days, it was expensive. They were buying planes. They were dealing with these fleet management issues. So Fred goes to Vegas. He's down to his final, I think it was like $10,000 to $15,000. They could not make payroll for the next week. And in a story that I'm not sure if business school professors love or hate, he sat down at a blackjack table, bet it all, and ends up walking out of the casino with, I think, $25,000, $30,000, makes payroll, and then, as they would say on any good podcast, the rest is history. But basically, just an unbelievable, like, freaking balls of steel. Like, this guy is that entrepreneurial grit or just risk-taking ability, freaking second to none, man. Great article in Arena. I thought Max did a great job covering kind of the life and times of a really phenomenal entrepreneur and great American patriot.
Yeah, and I think when we think about contrarian thinkers, probably betting your company's money on a blackjack table is a nice contrarian way to behave.
I'm not sure what the lesson exactly is there. It's maybe the Cluely guys if they ever get down to their last.
Yeah, I could see them in Vegas. That's a good point. Oh my
gosh! All right, tab closed.
Yeah,
tab closed. Next, all right. So this is interesting. A jobs report out this week. Better than expected performance. Economy seems to be humming, especially in some of these critical industries. Now, there's this guy Zach Glabman. We'll talk, I think, a little bit later. The Reindustrialized Summit is coming up in Detroit, not this week but next week. Incredible gathering of folks who are helping to fuel America's industrial renaissance, building in manufacturing, in domestic production, in defense, really just all sorts of critical industries who want to make things in the physical world here at home. And Zach is on this pretty interesting road trip where he's been touring some factories. He had a couple of takeaways. I'm curious your thoughts, Ben. He talks about, everybody's hiring, but there's actually a hard time finding workers. The more people who retire, the more this knowledge crisis accelerates. There's a difference in what schools are teaching and what machine shops need. And then this one's pretty spicy. Tech and capital are chasing the wrong problems. Shout out to our friends in venture. And then most software doesn't match reality, and manufacturing is the backbone of the economy, but we don't treat it that way. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a great moment where we're clearly in a transition moment. Insert buzzword of AI, but where we have this world changing in front of our eyes, and there's gonna be these disconnects, right, between capital, between tech, until we get this whole thing worked out. And so I don't know what the answer. I think part of the answer is going to things maybe like Reindustrialize and having those conversations. And then also just trying stuff, right? Conversations are cool, but also just trying stuff. See what works, see what doesn't work. See where, keep trying stuff, keep iterating. And don't just hope there's going to be some golden savior, but just keep trying new things.
Well, you have a company. You talk to people in logistics and supply chain. What's the kind of the talent situation that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think there is noise around AI. I don't think we've seen the conversion of tech talent necessarily. There's a lot of noise around it, but we haven't seen it really get into these kind of manufacturing shop areas. But I think it's coming, and I think the whole world is going to change in front of our eyes as white collar jobs getting eaten up. Well, maybe this is an area that people want to go to.
Yeah, shout out to Zach for doing it. Interesting times, and certainly workforce issues are going to be chief among the challenges that we face. Let's close this one out.
Yeah, crushed it.
Okay, finally, and this is the last in our headlines for the week. Ukraine fears increased Russian aggression after U.S. halts weapons supply. So this week, there was some news out of the Pentagon that we will be, at least temporarily, perhaps longer, stopping shipments of certain weapon systems to Ukraine, given a dwindling stockpile. There was then some coverage, do we have what we need? Do we not have what we need? There's a lot of noise around this issue. What do you think's really going on here?
Who knows? And I think it's an interesting moment, though, to think about, first principles about war, right? In the Marine Corps, you are steeped in Clausewitz, MCDP1, Marine Corps Doctrine of Pub 1, and I think you're often thinking about, timing. When is the right moment to do stuff? So if this is a moment for Ukraine of weakness for Ukraine, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, is that the right time if you're Russia to make a move, or do you go back to the initial principles of war fighting, and is this a time where Russia tries to seek for peace because give your enemy a golden bridge is part of the also principles of war from Sun Tzu. So I don't know, but I think it clearly is a moment of something is about to change.
Yeah, it just seems look, we're in a situation where if this is real and we've got a supply and availability issue dictating policy, that's a bad outcome. The president should have all the options on the table at his fingertips. We should not have a situation where America's supply is constrained. Back to our abundance bros, we need more.
More of everything.
More of everything. It doesn't mean that the budget is limitless or that we should print the money to do it, but we need to figure out a way to move beyond kind of the stasis in the industrial base. This is a clear example of that.
And it connects to the things like the other two we were talking about when it comes to shops, manufacturing, some of the outcomes of not having that figured out yet means the weapons we develop and all those things will be slowed, and that's an outcome problem.
Yeah, bad outcome. So we'll wait and see on that one. All right, tab closed. Okay, well that concludes the first part of our show here. I think we've hit some headlines.
So I can't go home yet. We're not done.
You should probably go. This is the steam zone, not the sauna, Ben. You can't go marinate in the heat yet. Okay, what I think we're gonna do next, we're gonna do a little bit of a tour de force. One of the things I see all the time is there are so many freaking podcasts that cover defense, national security, industrial policy, industrialization, manufacturing, all the good stuff. We want to just highlight some clips and maybe talk about a couple of them. There's a lot out there. We're going to do 5. We're going to keep these quick, 2 to 3 minutes a piece. We're going to rip through these. The first thing that I saw this week that really caught my attention was this clip from the Drone Wars podcast. Shout out to our friends at Firestorm Labs. They had Sean Moore and Brett Harrison on the podcast, and let's listen in.
Let's talk about the military side of this for a minute.
I'd start by saying it would be illogical to think that any conflict moving forward, you have access to GPS.
Mm-hmm. That's now table stakes.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Correct. Whether you're the Taliban, you can buy it on Alibaba and jam that way, or you can be a more sophisticated nation state and really do some damage. But either way, you should make the assumption that you're not going to have it.
Okay, so GPS, something that was initially military technology, now we take for granted. Uber, DoorDash, my ability to get from here to the train station, all rely on the readily available GPS system. The claim here is that, hey, that is not actually that is not only gonna not be there in war, but very likely in the next conflict, whether it's a nation state or a non-state actor, we Americans might not have access to the GPS that we come accustomed to. What does that mean?
Well, this goes back to Clausewitz, right? Who says politics, war is just politics by other means. So you can imagine, sure, not just our drones working, but them attacking our civilian infrastructure and trying to affect the will of the American people. So absolutely, it's going to be a world where the things we're used to day to day are going to be affected. It's not just going to be something happening over there like we got used to in Iraq, Afghanistan in the last 20 years.
Yeah, it matters for us. It matters for you. I think the world we've got to imagine is if there is a conflict versus China, if we're considering, hey, whether or not do we go defend Taiwan, what's going to be the willingness of the American people to sit and not have access to the creature comforts that we've come to know in the last 10 years? These aren't nice to haves. This is like how we get to work in the world.
If I can't DoorDash my burrito, or Uber Eats if you want to sponsor, we'll choose which one.
Don't worry, you can Klarna, you can order it now, pay later.
Yeah, if I can't Uber Eats my burrito, how is that going to affect how I vote and how I spend my time?
I think we may know how that will affect your vote.
I will say Marine Corps is ready for a GPS denied environment. From day one of the basic school, all Marine Corps officers are trained in navigating with just a compass. So
get yourself a land nav graduate. Get yourself a Ben. All right.
100 on final land nav.
Tab closed. All right, next let's move on to the Cogs of War podcast from War on the Rocks. Ryan Evans' new show that's focused on kind of defense technology and the industry behind a lot of the policy issues he covers. He had the former head of Skunk Works at Lockheed Martin, John Clark, on the podcast this week. Let's listen into what John had to say.
The part that right now we're putting a lot of energy and emphasis on is that we want to make sure that as we're in this new competitive environment, that everybody's just treated same or fairly on the competitive playing field. We don't want to be held to a set of requirements that a new entrant isn't held to. The analogy, if we go back to talking football, the analogy here would be is that we're both going to go play the football game, but I'm not allowed to actually put offensive linemen on the field.
Okay, let's leave this one there. So this is the empathy ask from our friends at Lockheed Martin that they just want to be playing by the same rules as startups. How does that land on you, Ben?
I mean, as someone who runs a startup that deals with a lot of these issues, I would flip that back on them. We want to play in a field where we're just evaluated on the technology that we're bringing to the table and not on a lot of the obstacles and the bureaucracy that it comes to go sell to the Department of Defense. It is pretty funny that he's saying this. And if you're probably listening to this, I think you're probably laughing that this is a Lockheed take.
It was interesting. It was not what I expected. I think there are probably a number of startups who would love to not have to pay, I don't know, $20,000 a month for a lobbyist to compete with Lockheed Martin, or maybe want access to the same classified requirements that Lockheed Martin has access to. So I think, look, level playing field, that probably will land well on folks. I think the content of what he's saying, great. Who is saying it, maybe mildly humorous, depending on who you are. Let's go ahead and close that one out. And that brings us into more of the industrial side of this week's takes. Yeah, so the Dynamis podcast had on Austin Bishop and Julius Krein, who co-founded the New Industrials Alliance. This is the second part of their content talking about the Techno industrial policy playbook. So talking about some of the things that we need to see to reindustrialize America. Let's go ahead and listen in.
The U.S., I think, really in the kind of late Cold War era made it its strategy to pursue kind of high value intellectual property and financial rents and basically sacrifice or allow the capital intensive and labor intensive parts to be offshored and be deprioritized. So, a classic company example given is Nike, which pioneered the model of instead of making their own clothes, they would design their own clothes and they would all be produced in Asia.
So, interesting take here. Basically, over the last decade or so, we focused on what we thought was higher skill intellectual property work, offshored the actual manufacturing of goods, and now we're in a position where all of a sudden we realize that may not be where the value is.
Yeah, and I think it's true. It speaks to a larger trend, I think, in American society and where people decide to put their energy, right? I think when you think about, the kids that went to school with us, where they want to spend their time, right? It's like consulting and banking and abstracting away to VC or private equity. It's not actually working at a company, right? So I think it's the same trend, actually, where instead of doing the full chain of stuff, you want to abstract away to what you perceive as cool, as strategy or the higher level stuff, and not actually have to get your hands dirty.
Yeah, I mean, the irony of ironies is that the disruption seems to be coming first to the creative intellectual property spaces, right? ChatGPT can readily make you a logo or design you a sock. It cannot yet produce that sock. Maybe coming, but we're not there yet. So it's kind of interesting, the order that's flowed. I think Austin and Julius are doing great work. And if you haven't checked out the Techno Industrial Policy Playbook, interesting content there for sure. Tab closed.
Done.
Rip it. All right. This was new for me this week. The Manufacturing Report is a podcast I hadn't actually seen before. But I love this opening clip about making hard things cool again. Let's listen in.
I speak to students. When I start showing them the cool projects that we get to work on, their eyes just light up. Oh, wow, like SpaceX, like rockets. Like I would bring in parts for them to show them the difference between a 3D printed part versus a machine component, right? Different ways of manufacturing, because you never know what's going to excite them. We don't know, is it 3D printing that they like, or is it going to be machining?
Okay, so super interesting here, right? We have a situation where, the guest on this podcast is actually someone who used to be a Hollywood red carpet reporter. Wow. She grew up in Los Angeles. She grew up reading the National Enquirer. She talks about it on the show. And now she's in Silicon Valley. She's in San Francisco. She's focused on getting Silicon Valley focused on making things again.
Yeah.
And so she goes to these classrooms and she's showing kids, machined parts, 3D printed parts, and just like the awe and wonderment, because these kids grew up with freaking tablets in their hands. So seeing some cool meme isn't that exciting, but seeing something in the physical world they can actually look and touch is kind of eye-opening for them. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think you and I are perfect examples. We fell for the making slides cool and making Excels cool.
Oh my God.
And imagine if we had something like this that would have said, you can go build something real. While I love my time making slides in Excel and learned a lot, I think this is awesome for the next generation to get their hands dirty and get excited about getting their hands dirty.
It's what we're doing here with this show, right? We've got to building stuff is cool again. It's the midwit meme, I think, right? It's like if you're really poor or you're really rich, you want to work with your hands.
Yeah.
If you're somewhere in the middle, you want to work with your mind. It's
Yeah.
just kind of interesting how that's playing out. It's high status to build again.
I think you're working with your mind on when you're building stuff too. I think it's a different way of working with your mind, and maybe even makes your slide building in your Excel better once you actually understand that physical world.
There was zero offense intended to anybody on that joke. Everybody's got a great mind. Your mind's great. The biggest mind, the hugest mind. It's all good stuff. Tab closed. That's rounded out with Ty Morse, the Relentless podcast. I love this guy. He's chasing around founders, just trying to have long form conversations. Really respect what he's doing. In this one, he talks to Phil Aronstein, who founded Dirac out of El Segundo and New York City.
It's very important that a founder, a CEO, has a support system of, like-minded, mission-aligned people who are in a similar position, in a similar time of their lives, who get it Yeah. And so I know I can call Augustus any time of day to just talk and ask him, like, hey, what's going on with you? We started companies at the same time. I mean, hell, we shared an office for a little bit, didn't we?
Ben, I think this is it's on the softer side, but I really like this point, which is that, you're starting a company, we're starting a company. It's not the easiest thing. It's totally. There are, most days do not feel like you are succeeding. And, the value of having a support system and ecosystem around you, really, really important. And we're here in New York City. You're working in kind of the defense and national security world. Where do you find community? What have been?
Well, hot take, and I understand and respect what he's saying, and certainly you do want some like-minded people. I also like having people, and that's why I love living in New York, that are wildly different, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you called me a couple of nights ago. I was headed to my restorative yoga class. Those are going to be people very different than working in the national security space, going to do a woodworking class, going to a museum. I think the value of New York is that you put all these crazy people doing wildly different things together, Absolutely. And that can be your support system too. It doesn't have to be just like-minded people. Because I think that can be really helpful as well.
I love that take. We are coming at you from Bushwick, Brooklyn, where I can guarantee you that at least on this block, no one else is currently filming defense and industrial content, maybe 2 blocks over.
Yeah.
No, awesome. I think that's a great point. Regardless, it's important to find people who you can resonate with, whether it's on what you're doing, whether it's something else. So I like that point by Phil, and shout out to Ty for the work he's doing. All right, tab
closed.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our first tab session. What do you think?
That was fun, getting closed tabs, getting to talk. I love talking and talking about myself especially.
It's kind of nice to clean out a browser window like that. I'm a tab monster. I typically have somewhere between 100 and 200 open at any given time.
Yeah, so we should talk next time if we're going to use Arc browser, because that's a disaster what you have on your screen.
He's not a Chrome fan. Arc browser.
Well, Arc is built on the Chrome browser background. So
you know what? Look, if you're interested, Arc browser, in sponsoring a podcast, we could be the one. We would love to talk to you. No, hey, look, we love ripping through this. I think there's a bigger point behind all this. There's some awesome content that people are putting out there. There's some amazingly smart individuals who are whether it's Substack or podcasts or YouTube channels, who are putting out awesome stuff specifically around America's Industrial Renaissance. And they're not focused on distribution. They're just focused on kind of getting some great insights out into the world. And so part of what we want to do here at the Steam Zone is draw attention to those people, make that accessible to a broader audience, because we want to unearth some of that stuff. So if you've got great shows that you love, that you think we should cover, please shout us out. Drop them in the comments. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear it, and we'll get them on here the next time. I will tell you, the smell, whatever's happening over here,
it's getting a little bit much. Here.
It's getting a little bit much. Why don't you go change that shirt, and then we'll bring in our guests.
Maybe get a little workout in, too.
Get out of here. All right, so we've gone through some tabs. We've closed out some headlines, talked about some podcasts. We're going to bring in a couple of guests, some of my favorite folks who are independent Substack writers, creators, podcasters in the space. And it looks like my friend Ben is back.
Yeah.
Without any workout sleeves.
I mean, you got to be ready to work out, got to be ready to look good. The defense industrial base needs people in good shape, so I'm happy to represent that here.
Well, thank goodness. All right, well, let's bring in our first
and let's
guest.
Make sure we ignore my tan. No one comments on that, please.
Let's go ahead and bring in our first guest, Andy Glenn, the creator of Building Our Future. Welcome to the Steam Zone. We've got Mr. Andrew Glenn. He's the creator of one of the best independent news sources out there today, Building Our Future, read from everyone from the gunslingers and the wagon toters to the C-suite of companies like Google and Palantir. Andy, thanks for joining us. Happy July 4th.
Hey, happy July 4th. Happy Independence Day.
Awesome. We've got 6 minutes. We're going to rip through this week of, it's been an action-packed week for you. 3 issues. You've covered quantum, space, emerging technologies, right at that intersection of technology and defense. Start us off with where you were on Monday of last week with the budget. What did it all mean for defense? What's good, bad, ugly?
Yeah, great question. First off, thanks for having me. So government has passed the big, beautiful bill. It is the massive, multi-trillion-dollar bill that President Trump has pushed for months now, very hard. It finally cleared the Senate earlier this week and the House today. Inside of there is the budget reconciliation, which includes, I want to say it's about $150 billion plus up on defense spending. A lot of that is going to go towards things like the advanced technologies, advanced computing, AI, investments into autonomous systems, and kind of shifting away from the large platform-centric focus that the department has had for a very long time. And while we're talking about some of those advanced kind of technologies, we've seen some really interesting developments recently in quantum over the past 6 months. And so I'm hopeful that we're going to see some investments going into additional quantum studies. But we shall see, just because the quantum sensing will be a huge part of any defense. So as we're getting the Golden Dome built out and the space-based sensors up there, hopefully we're seeing increased proliferation of quantum sensing up there to get the resolution on what our threats are doing. The only other thing I'm going to say about this week, as far as kind of the Monday edition that we covered, is that we're seeing geeks getting a lot more money, which is exciting as Meta starts poaching for hundreds of millions of dollars. The great contrast was Cristiano Ronaldo, who was bought for $80 million versus these guys who are getting $100 million now to come code for Meta.
What do you think about when you think about that plus up with the clear additional defense spending? How prescribed is it? How much is it? Like, is there free space that we don't even know how it's going to be spent, and how much is it really they're telling exactly how to spend it?
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of free space and areas that they can play as to where they're going to put the money. Every year, the government always has a list of unfunded requirements. This year is going to be no different. And then they're just going to kind of start at the top and work against those requirements to try and buy as much as they can, or to advance as much as they can.
If you want to get on that list, call your lobbyist. All right, great. Andy, so that's Monday. Bring us to Wednesday. Wednesday, you talked about a big program that you were pretty excited about that is no longer going to move forward out at DARPA. Tell us what happened there.
Yeah, right. So on Wednesday, we talked about Golden Dome, but nested way down in there, underneath all of the text, when we get to the actual news, is a comment about a program called Draco, which was a DARPA NASA combined program to explore and build a nuclear thermal rocket, which is not something new. We've been trying to do this for 50 years, 60, 70 years, maybe even since the NERVA program. But the benefits of having a nuclear thermal rocket is that it will absolutely unlock space exploration to a degree that we've not seen before. So the analogy being, hey, we've got a Starship that's coming online from SpaceX hopefully soon. If it wants to get to Mars, it's going to take it about 3 to 4 months on a good path, whereas a nuclear thermal rocket can cut that travel time down in half. So hopeful we'll see somebody else pick up the torch and continue to try and build a nuclear thermal rocket. But DARPA has said that it is going to step back from that, largely because it feels that the cost was getting too high, but also because the launch costs in general now are coming down, and with Starship potentially coming online, that the need for highly efficient capabilities is already being made out there.
So what's the best case story out of this, and what's the worst case over the next few years for this program?
Yeah, the worst case is that somebody else is going to do it, and by somebody else I mean a different country, and they're going to be able to claim a lot of firsts in space exploration that should be getting claimed by America. The best case scenario is that industry will pick it up and run with it and develop something. So whether that's BWXT or one of the primes or some enterprising startup that is yet to be emerge from stealth will come along and build something really incredible that propels us into the future.
I know we gotta let you get into the holiday, but before we go, one name from each of you, not Elon Musk. Who should create the nuclear-powered spaceship? Andy, who you got?
I'm gonna go with BWXT. Right, I love the company, and I think they can do it.
What do you got?
I think it should be an unknown. I think it should be someone, a grad student somewhere that we have never heard of before.
This unknown grad student currently toiling away in a lab. Get out there. This is the mission's calling your name. Andy, you do an awesome job of making a lot of dense material accessible to people. When this airs, we'll just be coming off of July 4th weekend. Give us your final blow here as we head out. I gotta say, what the fuck? What did we say we were gonna say? It's like blow off some steam here as we head into the. We're gonna blow off some steam as we head out here, Andy. What do you got for us? Send us into the weekend.
Yeah. Hey, happy Independence Day. It was hard fought. It's going to be harder to keep in the long run. And so we just wanted to remind everybody to think back on the sacrifices that got us to where we are, and to consider what needs to be done that we can keep America a democratic and free country moving forward.
Awesome. Andy, thanks for the work you do. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we are excited to welcome to the program Mr. Michael Nickerbacher, SWO, Surface Warfare Officer, transitioning to the civilian sector, known for his leopard print shoes and kind of audacious dress wear. However, today he's joining us from, I believe, a trampoline park. I believe we got Mr. Nickerbacher outside of his child's birthday. What birthday? How old is the youngest Nickerbacher?
So he is 5 years old, and it is too darn hot out here, so I am currently occupying the 7th Circle of Hell indoors, which is a small, not well soundproof room full of yelling children.
The children are in attendance and will hear everything that we're talking about today, which means we'll be much more respectful than the typical Knickerbocker news. All right, man. Michael, kick us off with topic number 1. What's on your mind?
So what's on my mind is kind of what's on a lot of people's mind is this Unit 201 that we're doing in the Army Reserve. And what perplexes me is, as an active duty guy that was working on transitioning and trying to do part-time work to learn more about the space and industry, it's nothing but you can't do, you're so limited because you are, as a commissioned officer, considered a representative or representative of the United States government. So you can't engage in a lot of activities. And most of those have to do with direct involvement with companies that aren't already under a contract for a program. And just getting people to let me start employment because I was an active duty officer was quite a challenge. Yet here we are now saying, hey, let's take all these high-level tech guys, and they're going to have the best interests of the United States Army and the country, and not necessarily their company. But the reality is altruism is bullshit. If you don't think that there's not some sort of motivation there to push more things towards their individual platforms, then we're just lying to ourselves. And not that they don't have good intentions, but at the end of the day, you're going to go where your bread is buttered. And the bread is still always going to be buttered by the companies that employ them, especially when you're talking C-suite executives at multi-billion-dollar valuated companies. And it's just, we from the Navy, I was scarred with the Fat Leonard scandal and seeing all the things that took people down there with corruption. Then we just recently convicted former Vice CNO Admiral Burke on corruption charges for awarding contracts to a company and then taking a big job with them. And here we are just saying, no, let's go ahead and do it. We're going to make them 05s, and this is all going to work out great. And I just don't see how we're staying in the ethical midfield.
Is there a way to do it? Is it doomed no matter what if you get these guys involved, or is there a way to get them involved in a different structure?
So I think what makes more sense is by looking at what the actual problem is and what the root causes are. So we do things like what we call, we do tours with industry. So we send a bunch of people out and they go to Google and Amazon and they're supposed to learn leadership and things. So instead of that, let's go get some of these folks that are already slated for follow-on orders to go and embed for a year with the Palantirs, with Meta, and with the agencies that are working on these programs. Get the right people in there so that they can understand the space. And maybe part of it is they do 3 to 6 months at one company and then 3 to 6 months at another company that's approaching the same problem. So you can at least see different sides and it's not all towards one company. And the other thing is what I think we need to do is have more engagement with the acquisition professionals. Because I think part of the goal here is the tech executives know more about what's going on in tech than the acquisition side, which is why we're buying the wrong things at the wrong time for the wrong price. Where I really think we need to do is better awareness and education of the acquisition professionals. And we also need to change their metrics on how they're judged on their performance. Because right now, cost, schedule, performance is all that matters for them. And so they're going to go to the ways they've always known it, because they're not going to have the time to go do deep research on everything. And when you look at, an open RFI is their version of market research, and they're only going to know what's out there based on who responds. And a lot of times, smaller companies, newer companies don't know how to play the game and write the package up right.
Okay, all right. Hey, Mr. Doom and Gloom, hold on a second here. So, Detachment 201, for folks who are not tracking, Army Innovation Group focused on direct commissioning senior tech executives, chief technology officers, Shyam Sankar from Palantir, Boz from Meta or Facebook, the former CTO of OpenAI and chief revenue officer of OpenAI are the first 4 who came in at the lieutenant colonel or O5 level that's reporting directly to the Army chief technology officer, Dr. Alex Miller. Shameless plug, this is airing on Monday. Tomorrow, on Tuesday, Dr. Miller is on my podcast, Crossing the Valley, to talk about exactly this issue, which is that, look, we've got a whole system of reservists throughout the military. This has long been in place to allow people who have private sector jobs to come in, show up, and do and continue to serve the country in that way. And as Michael says, it's blowing up on the internet. There's a lot of takes around this. I understand there's a lot of angst. Give us the flip side before we move on to your final topic, which is, if this goes catastrophically well, what might it mean for the Army?
I mean, I want to be catastrophically wrong as a person on this. I want to see this succeed. And, I think when you look at some of the other companies out there, like look at Saronic and Rob Lehman, who's still a Marine Corps reservist. You have Travis Ledwith at Marquee Ventures, Cameron Conger from Black Haze Group. Like, all these guys are Marine Corps, Navy. Like, you have a bunch of reserve officers that do their things, that are involved in tech. So I also think that there's a piece of finding the folks that are already reservists that have gone into tech companies and kind of blending them along with, the folks. And I just don't like the fact that the effort's not joint. But I think that if it goes well, it needs to spread. And I think who really needs it is the Navy. And I want to see this.
He's just jealous, is what this is.
It is funny because
Justin Finelli, get on the line. We need you. We need a Detachment 201 for the Navy.
We have it in the Department of Navy. I'm actually in that unit. It's called the Marine Corps Innovation Unit.
Ooh, there it is.
And so, like many things, the Marine Corps leads the way in doing it well, and then others take the press. So the Marine Corps has already established a way to do it, where you take reservists like me who work at tech companies and get to bring that skill set back to the Marine Corps.
Yeah, and that was going to be my other point. Is like, I know the Marine Corps was already doing this. I know
we just don't have the headlines.
You know what?
The same
That's
way.
why I know you. That's why I know you is from Marine Corps Innovation Unit. Just following it from a semi-creepy distance.
Michael, we got about 2 minutes left. Give us your second topic real quick. What else on your mind?
So my second topic here is, looking at some of the major awards and, what I think that's going to mean. And, as you look at like this week's HATS report, a majority of it was all related to AI or AI testing models. And I just think right now what we're seeing is kind of going all in on AI, which I know is not a hot take. But what I would say is, looking at AI for AI's sake without necessarily understanding how we're going to do the operational mission integration. We're using it for planning, but we're not necessarily using it for actually programming how we're going to operationally employ unmanned systems. And I want to see more effort on that. And then, one of the big ones that jumped out to me, and no offense to the company or people involved in this, but DARPA working with an AI company on AI-guided force design. And my issue with, using AI for force design is AI is going to be limited by what it's programmed to know about. So the unknown use cases or the illogical combinations of things, I feel can be left out of that model. So I think an AI-generated force design plan and policy may actually be missing some of the more innovative things that you're going to see people come up with, the concepts that wouldn't necessarily come from an algorithm in a computer program.
Yeah, you can't do force design with AI. You can red cell your force design maybe with AI and redesign something and then test it and say, how do I break this? What's wrong with what I designed? But to me, maybe on old school, you got to do force design by humans still. So
you guys are a couple of D-cells. There is nothing that we're not going to be doing with AI in about a year. Like I don't know what you're talking about here. All right, well, always a pleasure to talk to Mr. Nickerbacher. Quite a character. We appreciate him calling in from the trampoline park in some undisclosed location. We're close to the end here, Ben.
Awesome.
I know you got something saved in the chamber here. Yeah. Blow off some steam. Your turn. What you got for us?
I just think throughout all these topics we've thought about today, there is a great moment where we're getting talent working on these important problems. And there's a lot of stuff to work through, right? How do we get abundant nuclear? How do we get abundant, making a fair playing field for both primes and startups? There's a lot of problems to solve where outcomes are really going to matter, whether that's a manufacturing floor or a defense base. But I think it's great that there are a lot of people focused on these problems, and we're going to make mistakes. We're going to work our way through it, but we're going to be ready to fight in wars where GPS is denied. We're going to be ready to make hard stuff cool again, and I'm excited to see that all work through.
You and I are going to go wander around Brooklyn and try to find pizza places without using our Google Maps. I think that's going to be our training regimen. I need some help. All right, well, here's what I got. Look, my message, America's 249th birthday, we got to believe in ourselves again. I think this is one of the things that has driven me absolutely insane in the last couple of years is the doomers among us. They're killing us. This country has still, to this date, never met a challenge that collectively our economy, our people have not been able to meet. And so whether it's a military operation, whether it's re-onshoring, textile manufacturing, if we want to do it, we're going to do it. There's too many people spending their time online, in the cheap seats, in the comments section, ragging on someone else. It is so easy to freaking throw cold water on someone else's idea. I'm here for the builders, I'm here for the dreamers, and I think all of us would do well to just support the people who are taking on some hard challenges.
Well, maybe like Fred Smith, we should just bet it all on, maybe not black and we're playing blackjack, but bet it all on Hit 21.
Bet it all on 2025 and
for
on
America
yeah. 250. That's what I'd say. All right, everyone, that's a wrap on week 1 of the Steam Zone. Thanks for tuning in. Let us know who was your favorite guest, what was your favorite take, and if you want a couple tickets to Ben's gun show over here, hit us in the comments.
Yeah, and follow up. You can vote on my next best outfit, whether I should wear a long sleeve shirt, t-shirt, or other options, and thanks for listening.
More skin next time.